All right, stand by. 10 seconds to show.
Talent.
Ready, camera,
And cue talent.
One.
Roll to record.
Donald and Ted have some problems with the ladies, unlike our own Stephen Kruiser, who's the man that all the women want and all the men envy. I'm John Phillips, and this is The Rundown. First came the salacious headline in the National Enquirer, "It's over for pervy Ted, Cruz's 5 secret mistresses." The electorate hasn't had much of a chance to weigh in since the scandal broke, but we can't dismiss the potential impact. The National Enquirer has a surprisingly solid track record in reporting political sex scandals. You may or may not recall, they won a Pulitzer Prize for their reporting on former presidential candidate John Edwards' secret mistress. Next, there's the bitter wife fight going on between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. It was sparked by an anti-Trump ad which attacked Melania Trump for posing nude in GQ magazine. Trump then retweeted this side-by-side picture of Melania and Heidi Cruz and threatened to, quote, spill the beans about her. What beans? Well, the Trump campaign has since said that Heidi Cruz is a NAFTA architect, a Council of Foreign Relations member, and is a top executive that bailed out banking giant Goldman Sachs, all of which seems to contradict her husband's public positions. Heidi Cruz has since canceled a series of planned campaign events, all in the Northeast. And most recently, Corey Lewandowski, Donald Trump's campaign manager, has been criminally charged for pulling reporter Michelle Fields, formerly a contributor on this show, away from Donald Trump. She claims her arm was bruised and filed a police report, which sparked a nasty fight with both her employer and the Trump campaign. According to some polls, Trump also has abysmal ratings among women, with up to 74% saying they view him unfavorably, compared to 60% unfavorable for Cruz. So here are the questions. Do we believe that Ted Cruz has 5 mistresses? Should candidates' wives be off limits? Or are we allowed to vet potential first ladies in the same way that we vet their spouses? And are the charges against Trump's campaign manager justified or an overreaction? To explore all this and much more, we're joined by our pal from Dallas, Texas, Scott Ott, who's an author and political satirist. Here in Los Angeles, we're joined by stand-up comic and PJ-TV contributor Stephen Kruiser and political humorist Sunny Lohmann. Sunny, welcome to the set.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Good to be here.
Since you're the sole woman on the panel, we'll start with you. Let's begin with the mistress question, the bombshell in the National Enquirer. The National Enquirer was, of course, correct in their reporting on the John Edwards scandal after they were dismissed by mainstream publications, including the Los Angeles Times. They were right about Bill Cosby years before the mainstream media jumped on board. They were right about O.J. Simpson. They were the ones that found the Bruno Magli shoes. They were right about Tom Arnold. Is this a story that you think has credibility?
No, I mean, in a way, only in that the story is private investigators are looking into it. That was the story. It wasn't so much, this is true. The Enquirer never said, these 5 women had affairs with Ted. So I think the story, the way they wrote it, is probably true. They've also been wrong about stuff as well as right about stuff. But I do think it hurts Ted Cruz. I think that anytime you can plant doubt or just a seed, even the most rational person sees a story like this, even if you don't believe the Enquirer and you don't read tabloids, you go, well, maybe it's true. So I think there's like a tiny bit of doubt. And then I also think that this is Ted Cruz's strength, is his honesty. And so if you can chip away at that, it's effective. Mike
Walker, the gossip editor of the National Enquirer, is a good friend of mine. Yes. I hosted his book party when his last book came out.
I enjoyed that party very much.
That's right, you were there. That's where you got your selfie with Gloria Allred, I think.
A great moment in Kruiser history.
And Roger Stone is the man that was a former advisor to Donald Trump and identified by Ted Cruz as the quote-unquote henchman that planted the story. I have talked to both Roger Stone and Mike Walker at great length about this story. This story did not come from the Donald Trump campaign. It came from the Ted Cruz or from the Marco Rubio campaign, rather. Does that aspect of the story matter, do you think?
It matters to people like us. This goes back to like the Obama birther thing was actually a Hillary Clinton story and not a Republican thing, but nobody cares anymore after a while. Once it gets legs, nobody really cares about the minutia like that. I think one of the most interesting things you pointed out is how the mainstream media ignored all of those other National Enquirer stories, but since this one's about a Republican, boom, there was no lag time whatsoever. They jumped. In fact, the New York Times was offered the Enquirer story at the same time the Enquirer published it about John John Edwards back in the day, and they refused it and decided to run a story, a false story about John McCain's mistress at the same time. So that's how it goes when you're dealing with Republicans. I'm going to tell you this. It does not pass the sniff test for me. I've known Ted Cruz for several years now, and there are all kinds of things I like about him. I'm surprised he's got enough game to have gotten married, okay? There is no way that Ted Cruz is this smooth, sweet-talking womanizer on the side. That is not happening in this universe.
Well, according to the Inquirer, one of them was a hooker, so you don't have to have an engaging personality for that.
No.
Scott, has he handled this whole scandal the right way?
He who?
Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz? I don't think there's a right way to handle something like this. Let's start off with the assumption that it is a completely outlandish lie, which is what he said it is. As the Democrats have known for years, it is not the facts of the allegation, but the seriousness of the charge that matters. And of course, Donald Trump is brilliant at trying to take people out on the legs on which they stand. And Ted Cruz's legs are integrity and honesty and his Christian faith. So of course, what does Donald Trump do? But call him lying Ted all the time. And now Trump supporters, I'm not saying Trump did this. I don't know if, obviously Roger Stone is quoted in the story, and he's still a Trump supporter, even if he's not officially on the campaign. So Trump supporters have promulgated this story, even if it came through Marco Rubio channels. They like this. They're pushing this. But what do you do? What do you say if you're innocent of this charge? I mean, Ted Cruz said this is garbage. It's all lies. Two of the women who are alleged to be part of this Ted Cruz harem have both denied that it ever happened. One of those women is a spokesperson for Donald Trump. So, and if you read the actual story, what you find is it is not a story that says that we have any kind of evidence that these things happen. It's a story that actually says that Ted Cruz's enemies are alleging that these things happen. And so it's really no story at all, which is probably why no other major newspaper picked it up. Now, it's almost a week since I first heard these allegations. Still, no legitimate news source has found anything to buttress the claim. But it doesn't matter to Donald Trump, because as long as this floats out there that there's a possibility that Ted Cruz is a hypocrite, it benefits Trump.
Let's move on to the wives, because the wives have been a central part of this campaign now for the last few weeks. And I think it is of note that a former First Lady, Hillary Clinton, is running for president right now and was very much a part of the political operation of the Clinton White House. Should wives be fair game in a political campaign?
I think they should be, yeah. I don't know about looks. I mean, looks are so non-essential, and I think that's beneath the dignity for a candidate for president to insult the looks of a wife of one of the other candidates. However, if we had known more about Hillary Clinton, would Bill Clinton have been elected? She had a pretty shady past. A lot of stuff, the stuff that's come out since, where she attacked a woman who had been raped when she was 12, and that sort of thing. If that had come out, would Bill Clinton had been elected in the first place? And now, is it fair game to look at Bill Clinton when deciding whether or not Hillary is worth voting for? Because Bill will also be in office. A lot of people are going to do that.
Now, one of the things that happened in the CNN forum where Anderson Cooper was moderating was Donald Trump said that he went out and retweeted that image about Heidi Cruz because the Ted Cruz campaign started it by tweeting negative things or putting negative things out there about his wife, including pictures. And Cruz said, no, you can't blame me. That was an independent expenditure that Liz Mayer put out, and I had nothing to do with it. Well, isn't that like Whalen saying he has no connection to Madam?
Not really, because I think I'm pretty sure Liz did this on her own. She's like, I've known Liz a long time, too. And I know what her motivation is in this, too, and what she's working from. So I don't really think that the Cruz campaign was coordinating that much with her. But it's... and it goes back to this, like, if we're going to get in a he said, she said thing, I don't like to use the word tawdry much because it's from 1942, but this is like, there's a tawdry aspect to this campaign now with this gossipy stuff, and it's really taken us away from the issues. Back to the question about whether the wives should be part of it. I mean, you can't avoid that. In these days, everything. I'm surprised that the kids aren't being thrown into things, and that will happen one day, I fear. But, this is why people don't run for president, too, though. This is why nobody wants to run run for president anymore is because this kind of stuff goes on. But I don't think
kids have been thrown into it. Ted Cruz's
Oh, yeah,
daughter
you're
has
allowed
been
to throw-
attacked
You know
a couple
what,
of
though?
times.
Here's my take. And Scott, you're the only one who's had your name on a ballot, so maybe you disagree with me. My take is this. If the spouse or the kids become agents of politics, meaning they go out and they make political speeches, or they work for your foundation, as was the case with Chelsea Clinton, or they go out and they attack other candidates, as Chelsea Clinton did. She was one of the ones that went out and leveled a bunch of blows to Bernie Sanders. Then I think it is fair game. But if they're not used in the campaign mailers and they're not used as campaign surrogates, then you probably should leave them alone. But if they're out there, they're fair game to me.
Yeah, I hate even to use the term fair game, because you would think that there would be the news media would actually be concerned with facts that are germane to the race and to the role in government that this person is going to have. It's not a matter of who is it okay for us to attack. The question is what's being done legitimate? Now, obviously, as Kruiser has well pointed out, Ted Cruz could have had nothing to do with what this independent super PAC did. Frankly, if Donald Trump says he did, he's accusing him of committing a federal crime. I believe it's a felony for a candidate to conspire together with a super PAC to do something like that. Secondly, the picture that Liz Mayer's super PAC sent out of Melania Trump was a picture that was on newsstands. It was a picture of Melania Trump doing her work. This would be like sending out a picture of Ted Cruz's wife, Heidi, standing in front of the Goldman Sachs building. I mean, it was just what she did, and there was no nastiness about it. It was, is this what you're looking for at a first lady, or would you rather vote for Ted Cruz? What really bothers me, though, about this whole thing is the fact that it is now being portrayed by the media, and to a certain extent, by the way you've laid it out here, John, as if there's this whole dirty thing going on in politics and that it's all just this filthy, tawdry mix and they're both involved in it. It's a moral equivalency that just isn't so. Ted Cruz has done nothing but act with integrity during this whole process. I'm not a big Ted Cruz cheerleader. I am, anti-Donald Trump, but Ted Cruz has not engaged in this stuff at all, and it is not something where both campaigns are getting down and dirty. Only the Trump campaign is done.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that. When you look at what happened in Iowa, and they
shocked.
put out that mailer essentially saying, or put out the word that Ben Carson was dropping out, then distanced themselves from it. They did the same thing in Hawaii to Marco Rubio. They put this, or a friendly organization put this mailer out on behalf of Ted Cruz to do damage to Donald Trump. And I'd also point out that at the beginning of the race, when he was campaigning in Iowa, he appeared with that anti-gay pastor who said that gays should be executed. And Ted Cruz was there at the event when that was said and didn't say anything about it that day. I don't think that's a man who's acting with integrity. I think that's a man doing whatever it takes to win.
I think that you can probably go through his whole campaign and find all kinds of things you don't like that he did. I don't know about that particular instance with a pastor, so I'm not going to comment on that. But as you well know, in the Iowa case, with the mailer that he sent out, it was a mailer that the Iowa Republican Party had actually done a couple of years earlier. And the incident in Iowa with his supporters saying, hey, we've heard that Ben Carson is getting out of the race, try to win over their delegates. Well, the whole purpose of a caucus is to try to win over their delegates. What is the crime in saying, hey, Ben's going back to Florida? He said he was going back to Florida. Let's try to win over his delegates. There's no crime in that either. Now, I'm not saying that Ted Cruz has never made a mistake or that he's, walks on water or anything like that. But the idea that this whole tawdry wife thing comes from the Cruz campaign is absurd.
Kruiser?
I'd like to point out the media aspect of this again, instead of going to the candidates right now, because the media is still solely focused on this. You've got the front runner and the Democrats over there looking like she may be indicted for felonies and treason and things like that. We're still not talking about that. You've got her out there railing against hedge fund managers. Her son-in-law is a hedge fund manager. If you want to talk about legitimately involving the families, on none of that, the media, it doesn't matter with the Democrats. They always get a free
foundation, which is essentially a slush fund.
Yes, and they get a free pass on all of this all the time, which is why I wish that the spouses and the families and everybody weren't fair game, because it only negatively impacts Republicans ever, because the Democrats will always, always, always get a free pass in the press.
All right, let's move on to Michelle Fields. Should Corey Lewandowski go to jail for what happened?
I think he should have apologized. I don't know if he should go to jail, but when it happened, he denied it, and it's obvious that he did it. And he denied it, and she was
criminal
attacked,
charges have been filed.
and they smeared her, and she lost her job. I mean, she had to quit her job because Breitbart wouldn't support her. So she had to file charges in order to clear her name, and they made that a necessary thing in my
But should he go to jail?
What do you get for a misdemeanor assault? Do you go to jail?
No.
I don't
live
think
in
you go to
Florida.
jail.
But I mean, it's a criminal case. Your thoughts?
It's a misdemeanor. What's he gonna get?
Here's one of these
slap on the
things
wrist,
where-
don't touch ladies on the arms and bruise them. I mean, that's okay with me.
I know that the whole thing, the whole vibe with the Trump people is he's fighting the power, and he's coming back, and the media, and the blah, 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 blah. If they had just said, this was a mistake,
Yeah, I'm
we're
sorry.
boom,
Right.
this is
Over.
done 3 weeks ago, there
Right.
are no criminal charges.
pushed
but
her into a
first
corner.
first Lewandowski comes out, I've never met her, and he goes, okay, I met her, but I didn't know who she was. Well, okay, I wasn't sure, and the story changed
Yeah.
42 times in the first 48 hours and everything, and I think Michelle
And then it
probably
was
just
Was it
got
accurately
annoyed.
described in the Washington Post before you saw the video?
The only thing I remember seeing is her saying she felt something pull her.
I think it was she was pulled down.
She never said that.
No, it
she
wasn't.
never said
Yeah,
that.
she
It
never
was
said
not.
that.
The Washington
She said
Post.
she was
What was the
pulled-
exact phraseology?
She said
No.
she was pulled back and down, and
No.
that she was able to keep her feet. That she managed
That's
to
right. That's
keep her
right.
feet. So she was not
What was
pulled
the
down.
phrase that was used in the Washington Post?
She never said she was pulled down. I mean, she never said she was pulled off her feet. She did say she was pulled backward, and at one point she said she talked about how campaign managers shouldn't be in the business of pulling journalists down, or some words to that effect. But she didn't say that she was pulled down. And if
No,
you
she
see
never
the
said
video
she hit
now,
the floor.
security.
You're right about
and if
that.
you see the security video now, you can see that in fact Lewandowski grabs her, pulls her, and I know Michelle, you know Michelle, she was probably wearing heels, and so she became unstable for a moment, and
It left
kind of
a
got
bruise.
yanked.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
and it
hard
clearly
enough that
left
it
the
left the
bruise.
bruise.
Do you
But
think
here's
the
the thing,
Washington Post
John.
description was correct?
I don't know exactly what the Washington Post description was. I know what Michelle's description was, and I know that her description has not been contradicted by the video. But here's the real issue here. Okay, Kruiser's right. The campaign should have just said, "Hey, sorry about that." If Lewandowski really thought, as they're now claiming, that Michelle was touching Trump and in some sort of threat to him, and he was just defending her, well, he should have said that on day one.
The story
He
keeps
should have said,
changing.
"Hey, well." Yeah, so he's changed the story a bunch of times. First saying he didn't touch her at all, now saying he was protecting her. So, but here's the problem: when she came out with the statement and what happened to her, the immediate response of Corey Lewandowski and the Trump campaign was, "You're delusional, you're a liar, you're an attention seeker," and then their
Not only that,
minions
but
began
digging up
digging
dirt
up
on
and
her.
trying to destroy Michelle's
Right.
reputation as a truth teller, and nothing in the evidence has contradicted her. If they had not done that, then I would just say, hey, send this to trial, see how it comes out. As it stands, I think they ought to fire Lewandowski for his response.
All right, you get the last word. That's all the time we have for today, but now it's your turn. Do you believe Ted Cruz has 5 mistresses? Are candidates' wives fair game politically? And are the chances against Trump's campaign manager, the charges, justified? Tell us what you think in the comment section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.